Preseason game number 2 is upon us. Who's rising? Who got the benefit after week 1 today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It's a great day to be a Chiefs fan. Matt Derrick is with us here from Chiefs Digest. We're brought to you today by FanDuel, and you can get in all the action because right now, through the end of the summer, they're giving all customers a daily boost or bonus every single day, every single spot that you want to get in the action. Get it before the summer's over at FanDuel.com. Go there and get started. We are going to get started with what is going to be a great show about where this team is changing. I love this week every preseason because this is where the rubber hits the road and things start to get twisted towards week 1. Matt Derrick's here from ChiefsDigest.com. Go follow him over on Chiefs Digest on the YouTube channel for Chiefs Digest, as well as Matt Derrick on Twitter. Matt, thanks for being with us. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as RGR Football. We're breaking down all kinds of stuff for this team, and NFL 33, where I give you the lowdown around the rest of the league. So check that out as well. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out another Locked On show for your next listen, because we're free and available here on YouTube, podcasts, every platform that's free, Spotify, Apple, whatever you're looking for. You can get us 5 days a week plus. Thanks for making us your very first listen. I always try to do that. I'm first and foremost preoccupied, Matt, with what happens the first couple of days of practice after week 1. And that's what we've seen the last couple of days. Some tweaks, some changes, guys that earn more reps, guys that lose some reps. The injuries twist that a little bit. So from your perspective, everything that you've seen the last 2 days of practice since preseason game 1, what's the biggest standout about the changes that have gone on?
Yeah, I call Monday that first day after the preseason game, whatever day of the week it might be when the team gets back after the first preseason game, that first practice, moving day, because that's the biggest changes that you see in the depth chart and you see as far as, who's getting snaps, because it's not only adjustments based on who did well, who did poorly in the preseason game, but you also start to see the narrowing down of the roster. You start to see, the players who are going to be making the 53 getting more and more of the first team reps, and the guys that they're taking a look at, you go from maybe 9, 10, 11 receivers, down to maybe 7, 8 receivers, getting first team reps. And that's what we saw. Nothing that I would say is dramatic as far as the starting positions go, Ryan. Really at this point, the only starting position that's up for grabs is really that cornerback spot, the number 2 cornerback spot on the defense. That's really it. Injuries do kind of complicate things because, Chris Jones isn't practicing. Nick Bolton's not been in. Justin Reed and Bolton are both back, but they're not taking part in a lot of team periods right now. So that kind of throws things up a little bit in the air, and you're seeing some guys still getting reps that might be on the cusp of the roster. But really, it's that cornerback spot more than anything. Jalen Watson getting most of the first team reps. Najee Johnson's getting a few. There was even some looks because without both Reed and Brian Cook is out for personal reasons right now. His wife's having a baby, so there's a little bit of juggling there too. We saw a lot of some nickel packages that didn't have a third safety, had 3 corners, and now Trent McDuffie's going back into the slot, and you get Najee Johnson and Jalen Watson out there at the same time. Those two are really the next 2 standing as far as in that race for that number 2 corner spot. They both seem to be healthy at this point, and that might be the one roster battle left to watch. And I'll be really interested to see how that kind of shakes out over really this week. I mean, next week the team goes back home and practices. While they'll be open to the media, they won't be open to the public. So we'll still get a look at them, but what we're able to talk about, Ryan, will be a little bit more limited.
Yeah, it gets a little secretive at that point in the season. And folks, we're going to tell you about what happens after this game, after they leave St. Joe, coming up later in the show, and about who's really pushing forward. But staying in this position group, Josh Williams has got a lot of run with the ones to this point. Kelvin Joseph has got a good deal of it as well. Looks like he's about to come back. Would you say that those two are out of the CB2 race right now?
I wouldn't necessarily say out, but I think they're on the outside looking in. I mean, I think they both still have an excellent chance to make the roster. But, Josh Williams, kind of had his chance. I mean, he had his chance to squeeze onto that position when guys were banged up, and had a chance to really grab a hold of it. And to the coach's eyes, he didn't do that. So now the two players who I think were entering the favorites, entering this training camp, just depending on what their health was, now they're going to get the chance, because Jalen Watson and Najee Johnson are about as close to 100% as they're both going to get. Both feeling better. I mean, Jalen Watson's now been out of the yellow non-contact jersey. He seems to be getting to be 100%. Najee Johnson had a little bit of the worry with the setback as far as the knee. Maybe he needed to go through that in order to get the confidence, because you and I both know, I mean, when you're coming back from a knee injury like that, sometimes believing in the knee and knowing that you don't need to be afraid of it, knowing that you can go full go bore and nothing bad's going to happen is just a big part of that recovery. Maybe he hit that. So I do think it's down to those two. I mean, Kelvin Joseph didn't get much of a chance because he had the injury that kind of popped up and knocked him out. Could he, re-enter the picture if both Watson and Johnson neither one of them nails down that job? Yeah. I mean, there's still enough time. And honestly, I mean, this could still be something that goes into the regular season. The solution that Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt come up with might be that there isn't a permanent starter, that even in the first quarter of the season, maybe they're still mixing and matching and going with the player that they think is the best matchup that week. I know they don't want to. They want a clear-cut starter. They want somebody who's in there week in and week out. But, if one of these guys doesn't claim the spot, they may not have much of a choice.
It makes things difficult to play a consistent team, especially for the other guys at the position group, for Trent McDuffie in particular. You'd like to be able to give him a position and lock him down there. I hope that they can figure that out. The question of who takes that is going to be what happens next in this preseason game number 2, and who is making strides towards that in getting themselves either more reps or a more prominent set of reps in game 2. We're going to talk about that coming up next. You love sports just like I do, and you love them so much you never want them to stop. But the playoffs have come and go. It's baseball season, and now it's training camp. There's always something to get into the action, and wherever you want to go, you can do it with one app on FanDuel and place any bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is giving away to all customers either a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. You can even take a look at the Chiefs right now. They are plus 600 for the next Super Bowl, the three-peat Super Bowl. You can go to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer right now. There's still time left in this summer. FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook betting partner of Major League Baseball and the NFL. Now, make sure, folks, that you get in Locked On NFL today, because it's 24/7 coverage of your favorite league. You can get it here on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV, as well as get over to Chiefs Digest here on YouTube. I think you guys are going to enjoy that. It's an enjoyable channel. I watch it. I hope you guys will too. You get a lot of Matt, and that's a good thing for me. And that's exactly where I'm going next, Matt, is that I need more information from your eyes on maybe not just my guy, but who in the wake of game 1 is starting to surge towards game 2 where they can actually earn themselves a roster spot.
Well, I mean, are you restrained, Ryan? Because I don't want you to get too excited here. I don't want you to jump out of your chair or anything like that. But the darling of training camp this week and the last week in St. Joe, the star, there is no doubt it's Carson Steele. And I'm going to dismiss a myth that you're also going to enjoy, because I know that you're a big believer in trying to destroy this myth, because I've been asked this question several times in the last couple of days. Can Carson Steele make this team as a fullback? And my answer to that question, Ryan, is no. Carson Steele's not going to make this team as a fullback. He's got no chance to make this team as a fullback. The only way he's making this team is if he is able to do everything. If he's able to play running back, if he's able to play a little fullback, a little bit of H-back, maybe even a little bit of tight end on a lot of special teams. That's how he is making this team. And you saw in the preseason game, I mean, his running style is obviously something that I think that this team needs. I mean, we've probably have talked a lot about if the Chiefs are going to have a thunder and lightning, Pacheco is the thunder. Well, maybe Pacheco is the lightning and Carson Steele is going to be the thunder, because he is a hard runner. There is no doubt about that. There's a lot to like in just his approach and his running style, his strength, everything about it. He also, embraces pass protection. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is going to help make him a job, is that he might end up being this team's best third down back. I mean, that might be the possibility here. So, there's no doubt. I mean, he's the one who has absolutely surged the most. Now, Clyde has been sick the last couple of days, so take that into consideration. But he's been getting second team reps. I mean, it's just right behind Isaiah Pacheco as the starter at the running back spot. He's been getting reps in the last couple of days ahead of Generic Prince. Is that an indication that he's ahead of him in the depth chart, or is this just let's give Carson his week of in the glory of the moment, see how he does in the second preseason game, and evaluate from there? That could be the case, but there's no doubt. I mean, he is absolutely getting his opportunity to nail down a spot on this team this week. And from what I've seen so far, I think he's doing it. But he's going to be doing it because of just what you've been saying, Ryan. And like I just said, it's going to be a little bit of everything. He's not going to make this team because the Chiefs feel like that they need a fullback for 3 snaps a game. He's going to make this team because they feel like, hey, can he be a lead blocker in short yardage situations? Sure. But they also feel like maybe he might be the runner in some short yardage situations.
I can see somebody, a Wanya Morris maybe at the fullback spot in front of Carson. I think there are ways to do that. So for me, I'm glad to hear that he's at the front of your surging list as well. I just need a quick insight from you. I've heard people refer to him as Thor, as his alligator's name. I can't remember what that is off the top. I'm going with Sunshine right now because as angry as Pacheco runs, he feels like kind of a groovy runner, but he's still going to hurt you. Do you have a preference for a nickname?
I don't. I mean, I asked him the nicknames that his teammates were calling him, because I knew he had a bunch of nicknames in college. There was Thor, Fabio, Warhorse. I mean, there were a lot of different ones that I saw. And so, but to find out his teammates are calling him Crocodile because he has an alligator, Crocky J the alligator. That was a new one. And I mean, more remarkable about this, Ryan, is that I know exactly, what I got for some Christmas and birthdays at what age and everything. The fact that this kid isn't sure if he got an alligator for Christmas or not in the 2nd or 3rd grade. I think I would remember the exact moment in time when I got an alligator, Ryan. So I don't know. I mean, that alone opens up a whole other world of questions, because it's like, what else does this kid have that's exotic enough that would make you not exactly remember the details of when you got an alligator?
There's a tiger in his future, I'm pretty sure. But he's not the only one that I think garnered themselves more reps. I feel like the wide receiver group was a little bit up and down. To hear Matt Nagy say it, more up than down. So who's garnering some of the wake of the injury to Hollywood Brown? Who's going to get some of those reps, and who's using them to their most?
Well, and that goes back to, Ryan, when we talk about this is not only the time of period where, players gain or lose playing time, but the roster shrinks and you start focusing on who are going to be those 53 players that make your team. And, based on what I've seen at camp the last couple of days, like I said, that receiver rotation has shrunk down. I mean, even with Hollywood not out there, really the only receivers that you're seeing get work with the first team and with Patrick Mahomes right now are Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, and Justyn Ross. That's leaving out Kadarius Toney, Nico Remigio, some of the other guys who've been getting looks. It includes Jared Wiley, who I think obviously is squarely on this team. It also excludes Irv Smith, who hasn't, by my count, gotten any first team reps. I mean, and that becomes kind of a dividing line. I mean, it does make you wonder, okay, is this team only going to keep 7 receivers, including Hollywood? It's just going to be 3 tight ends. Is that the possibility? Because, maybe the Chiefs are thinking now about keeping 4 running backs. And that's what I've been factoring in the whole, how do you handle Louis Rees-Zammit, a part of the equation? There's other things that they're going to have to consider, as far as who's going to be the kick returners. Xavier Worthy is probably going to be your number 1 punt returner, but right now, a lot of the guys who are the top of the depth chart at kick returner aren't returning kicks right now, or not, are on the outside of the 53. Cole Hardman's one of them, but hey, is a Derek Prince going to crack it just to return kicks and be a fourth running back? Can Remigio still be on this team as a special teams player? That's where we're starting to see on the offensive side a little bit of the crack start. And on the defensive side, we talked about cornerback. I think that the depth chart at linebacker has been pretty well established now, even with the injury to Nick Bolton. With him coming back, I think that kind of sets the line that, hey, Jack Cochran and Cam Jones are squarely on the 53. It's after that I think you got a little bit of a dividing line, and whether or not the Chiefs keep a sixth linebacker or not. Safety, I think, is pretty well set. I mean, although there has been an interesting development as far as, since you have two starting safeties out right now, that Chris Roland Wallace has been getting some looks. It's been interesting. Maybe he's the guy to really keep an eye on for the practice squad. But the defensive line is still up in the air to me. I don't know what your takeaway is, where we haven't talked about from the game yet, but there's still concern about this team, about the end of its depth at defensive end. And they're still trying to figure out the defensive tackle rotation. I mean, I think Wharton, Jones, Pennell, Farrell, Noddy is a pretty solid five. Are they going to keep a sixth? Matt Dickerson played well. He's been kind of, getting more reps this week, and without Chris Jones and Derek Noddy still getting reps, how much of that is just, trying to, compensate for that. And for that record, how ready is Derek Noddy going to be at the beginning of the season? There's still a lot of questions to kind of, determine there at the end of the depth chart, at a couple places on the defensive line and the defensive group altogether.
Right now, according to my notes and takeaways, I'd put Dickerson ahead of Farrell and certainly of Lovett. Although I don't think those two were very separated, to tell you the truth. So I would side with the rookie. But I do think this game in particular is going to make the decision at that positional group of who gets a shot at it. Because like you said, you can have Pennell as a replacement for Noddy in the first couple of weeks, but I do think there's a hard ceiling on the number of snaps Mike Pennell can play for you this year if you're going to have him in January. And so I do think that is use him for a while, let him rest, maybe even back to the practice squad. I don't know, but that is my big concern as well. And hopefully this game will shed a little bit more light on it. We won't see as much when they get back from this game, folks, but what happens after preseason game number 2 and you wrap up camp in St. Joe, things get a little bit more cloudy. We're going to go through that coming up next. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. With your schedule right now, the kids' activities, back to school, everything going on, the big work projects, and everything else in your life, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes you happy and that you want to prioritize, it's hard to make it happen sometimes. When you feel like you don't have any time for yourself, it's time to make that happen. Therapy can help you with that. If you are thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's certainly geared toward everything that you're looking for, entirely online, suited to your schedule, and can be flexible to match what you need. You just fill out a questionnaire, you get matched with an actual therapist. And if not, if you don't gel or you want to switch therapists at any time, you can do that free of charge. Never skip another therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're going to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Make sure if you want 24/7 coverage, you check out Locked On NFL Today. It is here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV. And so this is where the questions get kind of iffy, Matt. We kind of go into not a blackout, but less visibility after this game. So for me, it's kind of do or die for this ball game. How do you see the momentum usually shift after they break St. Joe and after preseason game number 2, they're back in Kansas City? What does that do for how they finalize the roster and what do we get to see, or more importantly, what won't we get to see?
Yeah, and it gets a little bit different when you're playing that Thursday night game compared to the rest of the league, because you're kind of built around the rest of the league's schedule. So, the Chiefs are ahead of everybody else. So they're going to be kind of a little bit different a workload, even though everybody's going to be playing that last preseason game at the same time. But there's also a break between when the Chiefs have their 5 days off versus when the rest of the league has their 5 days off for the players going into the season. Remember, the Chiefs will start practice on that Sunday before the Thursday when the rest of the league's on a break. So, the Chiefs schedule gets a little funny, but when they get back to Kansas City after the second preseason game, it's a little tricky, one, because now the way that the cuts are set, remember, nobody gets cut until the final cut line. So they're going to have 90 players on the team up until August 27th. Not really built to have 90 players for a long period of time in Kansas City. So, it gets a little tight in the locker room. They might have some guys that they actually have to build some temporary lockers for outside the locker room. They do bring in some extra space and everything, but it makes it a little tight around the headquarters for a couple of weeks. But as far as the practice goes, that's the really tricky thing, because especially when you've got that Thursday night game, after preseason game number 2, you really start, looking ahead at that season opener. And now it's even more so from what I was talking about this week. You really start focusing more on the guys who are going to be on your 53, getting them ready to play. So, it's a challenge sometimes for those players who are at the kind of bottom of the roster who are competing for spots, because now they may not be getting as much work during practice as they're going into that last preseason game. So, they're the ones that are probably going to play the bulk of the playing time, but they're not necessarily getting the bulk of work in practice. So that can make it a little bit of a challenge and be kind of an interesting quirk to the whole thing. For the Chiefs, I mean, it'll be, once again, a little bit of a concentrated time frame because of the Thursday night opener. There's a lot of moving parts there, and when you're the Super Bowl champs, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of events, a lot of media that goes into this. There's will be a lot of national media and broadcasters coming in to do a lot of work leading up to the Thursday game. So that becomes a bit of a distraction. It's not really, chaotic. Chiefs are never chaotic. There's some organized chaos to it, but it's different than what they're going through up in St. Joe for sure.
Well, and that brings me to, I think it gets harder to impress enough to make this roster. So who, if you had to pick just right now, has an outside chance at still making progress when we can't see them daily like we do in camp, between that second preseason game and cut down day?
Yeah, to me, it's the guys who are really right now on the cusp of it. I mean, if you're talking about who are going to rank the players from 1 to 91 and their chances to make the roster, hey, you know what? If you were 80 plus going into the first preseason game, your chances are probably pretty slim. Now, I would say if you're in that ranking, if you are even 58 plus, I mean, your chances are pretty slim. I mean, it's down now to maybe there's a half dozen players or less, competing for the last few spots, and half of them will maybe make the team, half of them won't. It's not a big number. I mean, right now it's not like 75 players are still in consideration for this coaching staff. A lot of people around the league will tell you, honestly, after your first preseason game, you probably know who the majority, if not all of your 53 players are, and maybe only injuries or some other quirks will really change that. There's a few places that the Chiefs have to figure some things out. Cornerback, even at the bottom of it, I mean, you start talking about who's going to be if the Chiefs keep 10 defensive backs, and I think 4 safeties are pretty well set, maybe 6 corners. Who's going to be your 5th and 6th corners? Is it a Kelvin Joseph, Nick Jones? Will the Chiefs keep Kamal Haddon? There's some numbers there that are going to be really, really tight at the end of that group. Same thing on the receiver side. Who's a player that can still, has a chance to make the team? I mean, Nico Remigio right now, if I'm looking at the reps at training camp, is on the outside of the 53 right now. Can he still fight his way back onto the 53? Yeah, but he's got to play a super clean game. He can't have mistakes. The fumble, the issues that he had on the muffed punt, can't have those. I mean, you've got to clean up all of those in the preseason game. You got to have another couple of good weeks of practice to put yourself back into that spot. Like I said, I don't think he's out of it. I don't think any of those guys who are in the 54 through 58 are out of it, but they got to play, but that tells you just how much that this group has narrowed down right now. And like I said, the 53 are pretty much getting the reps with the ones. It's now the next 5 or 6 guys that are working with the twos. They've got to try and fight their way back on.
That's going to be hard, especially as you're trying to tune up starters, backups. And that brings me to my last question. Given the injuries that we've seen and the current status of a couple of starters, do you anticipate this is still Andy's kind of plan to go a half for the ones and mix everybody else in? Or do you think this is a reduced payload for the guys you need to start on week 1?
It might be a little bit reduced. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this is the week that we see like the offensive line get an extra drive with Carson Wentz. They usually do that in the first preseason game. I don't know if the 106-degree heat index in Jacksonville impacted that a little bit, but I would expect that at some point Carson Wentz is going to get to work with the number one offensive line and get him some work. Maybe even, a couple of the number one targets. I think there's some rookies that they do want to get some extended snaps. I think that's true with Kingsley, with Xavier Worthy, Jared Wiley. I don't know about Jared Hicks as much. I think they really feel like that he's in a pretty good spot that doesn't need a whole lot of work. And he got a pretty decent amount last week too, especially on special teams. So, there's some players that they still need to evaluate, and they want to give those guys the bulk of the work. So I would imagine still the backups are going to play the majority of that game. I don't know if the starters will end up going the entire first half. We'll hear from Andy Reid on Wednesday what kind of his plan, or his Thursday on what his plan is. But I would expect that it's probably not going to be the entire first half, especially the big stars. I think you do want to get, Mahomes and Kelsey out of the game early. But hey, at that receiver spot for sure. And without Brown out there, it's an absolutely perfect time to be able to give Worthy, to give Rashee Rice, a bit more work together and just really trying to figure out what you got there and who can make plays at full speed and who can't.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I'm hoping to see it. And thank you for leading us through this phase of training camp and lending us your eyes as always. Thank you, sir.
Always a blast, Ryan. Take care, my friend.
And you guys take care as well. We'll have another show for you tomorrow as we inch towards preseason game number 2, where all the marbles pretty much get laid out. Check out ChiefsDigest.com for Matt. Go over to NFL 33 for my work around the league, as well as RGR Football. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you making us your first listen. Grab another one and be back with us tomorrow, because we will talk to you then.